The topic of discussion today is globalization and interdependence. Now we start with what is dependence. Dependence in its most general form is described as a system which is contingent upon external forces. And what is interdependence? Interdependence in social sciences describe a situation of mutual dependence between social actors. In international relations, interdependence has been there for centuries. Now, there are two factors behind interdependence in international relations. The first factor is, since the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, for more than 3 centuries, the states were the major actors in international relations. States were dependent on each other, and the concept of national security was dependent on other states. For example, the neo-realist Kenneth Waltz has focused on the concept of relative capability. That is, a state will increase its power relative to the power of another state. So, dependence and interdependence have been the norm in international relations. Another factor which has led to the rise of interdependence in international relations is the effects of actions of government are depending on societal development that takes place outside its jurisdiction. For example, the development of national economies cannot be understood without taking into account what happens elsewhere. Now, globalization, which is another concept, it goes further than interdependence. Richard Cooper has stated that the international economy of the 1960s was characterized by a sensitivity of economic transactions between two or more nations to economic developments within those nations. Globalization is a process in which the world moves towards an integrated global society. The significance of the national borders and the national boundaries gets reduced. It thus calls into the question the distinction between domestic and the foreign relations. The living conditions of the people or the local communities are very much affected by actions taking place in other parts of the world. Distant events have immediate consequences on individuals' daily lives. The whole world is connected with each other. Every information, every idea which comes up in one part of the world gets affected or affects other ideas, other information in other part of the world. The notion of globalization refers to a measurable process of social change, which in turn may or may not have causal effects on political developments. Globalization is neither identical with nor does it necessarily lead to extension of political space and global governance. It does not necessitate the formation of world society or transnational identity. Globalization is a process characterized by the stretching of social, economic, and political activities across political frontiers. The events, decisions, and activities in one region of the world have influence on individuals and communities on other parts of the world. civil wars and conflicts in the world's poorest regions are impacting the domestic policies of the very developed countries, because refugees and migrants, for example from Syria, are moving over to the developed European countries. So, a terrorist activity in one place in Syria or Yemen, it's actually impacting the global policy of the other countries. Globalization is also intensification or growing magnitude of interconnectedness in almost every sphere of social existence. It can be ecological, it can be economic. Any disease like SARS virus spreading in one part of the world may create tensions for people in other parts of the world. Globalization can also lead to acceleration of the pace of global interaction and process. There is evolution of the worldwide transport and communication systems. The rapidity with which ideas, news, goods, information, capital, technology move around, it has really impacted the world. The routine telephone banking transactions in the developed countries like UK or USA are actually being dealt with call centers in India. The financial crisis, the stock markets are getting totally affected. It is said that in 2008, when there was a crash in the stock market, it took hours to spread to the stock markets in different parts of the world. But during the great crash of 1929, it took weeks for the spread of this financial devastation to other parts of the world. So, it is with globalization that financial decisions, financial impacts are spreading very fast to other parts of the world. Globalization can also be connected with growing extensity, intensity, and velocity of global interactions. Local events are having global consequences, and global events are having local consequences. There is much more to globalization than interconnectedness. There is a qualitative difference, and globalization implies that cumulative scale, scope, velocity, and depth of contemporary interconnectedness. This is dissolving the significance of borders and boundaries. Globalization seeks to capture dramatic shift in organization of human affairs. The world is being looked at in a different way. It's a global village today. The concept of globalization carries with it the implication of an unfolding process of structural change in the scale of human, social, and economic organization. Rather than social, economic, and political activities being organized solely on local or national scale, they are today being organized on the transnational or the global scale. Globalization is a significant shift in the scale of social organization in every sphere from economics to security. It is transcending world's major regions and continents. The contemporary information technology and infrastructural development has also given a push to globalization. The virtual real-time worldwide organization and coordination has taken place. The operation of multinational corporations have increased. There is greater mobilization and demonstration of even anti-globalization movement in different parts of the world. Although geography and distance still matter, but the process of time, space, compression is actually shrinking the world. The sources of local development is being traced to distant conditions or decision making. Globalization is very much connected with the concept of deterritorialization, as social, political and economic activities are increasingly being stretched across the globe. Even regarding terrorist and criminal networks, we can say that the networking is global. It is no more limited to a particular place. Power is organized and exercised at a distance. This power can be economic, political, cultural, or military. Denationalization of power has taken place after globalization has set in a big manner. Power is being organized in a trans-regional, transnational, or transcontinental basis. Many actors, from international organizations to criminal networks, exercise power within, across, and against states. States are no longer having the monopoly of power. Globalization can be defined as a process that involves a great deal more than simply growing connection or interdependence between states. It can be defined again as a historical process involving a fundamental shift or transformation in the spatial scale of human social organization that links distant communities and expands the reach of power relations across regions and continents. Now, there have been some empirical studies which have taken place regarding the levels of interdependence and globalization. It is being said that there is a decreasing interdependence among highly industrialized countries. But this is wrong, because even today we find that the industrialized countries are actually connecting and depending on each other. In the 1950s and 60s, after the Second World War, when several countries in Asia and Europe got independence, it could be said that at that time, interdependence was lower, according to a section of commentators. Now, this interdependence was lower compared to the decades prior to 1929. After the Second World War, we find there have been situations where America has come to the help of Western Europe in order to reconstruct, redevelop the countries. So, here we find interdependence taking place. In the latter part of the 80s and the 90s, there's a sharp increase in trans-border transactions in many areas such as trade, foreign direct investment, and other capital flows. Human mobility also increased during this phase. The volume of trans-border information and communication increased, and there was exchange of cultural products. The trans-border trade primarily takes place within the three trade blocs. They are the European Union, the North American Free Trade Area, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This is followed by trading by small countries. The communication flows indicate a similar concentration on a relatively small number of countries. The level of globalization varies significantly between fields and issues. The proportion of trans-border postal deliveries, cross-border phone calls, and foreign direct investment are the few indicators which are still below 10% among the G7 countries. But the indicators like foreign trade, foreign air travel, foreign emails, and consumption of foreign culture is often above 50%. David Mithrani, a pioneer integration theorist, has supported the concept of transnational cooperation, and he said that transnational cooperation will be required for solving common issues or problems. He brought in the concept of ramification, meaning the likelihood that cooperation in one sector would soon lead to extension of collaboration in other sectors. Now, the states are embedded in this integration process, and costs of withdrawing from these cooperative ventures is very costly. So the states will not try to do that. There are positive benefits of transnational cooperation. This has been supported by scholars in the 1960s and 70s. There are mutual gains of trade. The transnational actors also challenge the dominance of the sovereign states. The world politics, according to pluralists, was no longer an exclusive arena for states. It has changed. The non-state actors are today playing a very, very important role in international relations. Robert Cohen and Joseph S. Nye argued that the centrality of other actors such as interest groups, transnational corporations, and international non-governmental organizations need to be taken into consideration. Overriding image of international relation is one of the cobweb of diverse actors linked through multiple channels of interaction. Now, there has been the elaboration of interdependence, expansion of capitalism, emergence of global culture, and this concept of interconnectedness actually had impact on several aspects of the world and the states and the non-state actors which were working in it. Absolute state autonomy, which were actually entrenched in the minds of the state leaders, are no more there. Interdependence, it's taking a very important turn in today's world scenario. In his 1979 work, Theory of International Politics, Kenneth Walls argued and criticized that the pluralist argument about the decline of the state is not right. Whatever the degree of interdependence, whatever the ways of globalization the world is going through, the role of the state will always be important. Economic interdependence are actually taking place among the great powers. There is political interdependence. Walls and others have tried to modify the pluralist conceptions. The neoliberals also had the assumptions that the neo-realists were correct in certain spheres. The anarchic international structure, the centrality of states, and a rationalist approach to social scientific inquiry are correct. Anarchy does not mean durable patterns of cooperation is impossible. The creation of international regime has reinforced reciprocity and cooperation regarding sharing of information. Any country which is defecting from this concept of interdependence are punished formally or informally by the other countries. Now, there are certain similarities between globalization and interdependence. There's a widespread feeling that the nature of world politics is changing. Both globalization and interdependence support this view. New research agendas are coming in international relations. Both interdependence and globalization challenge the conventional theory of world politics. But both the concepts have not been able to reach a sound theory in international politics. There are certain differences also between globalization and interdependence. There are qualitative differences. Interdependence means a growing sensitivity and vulnerability between separate units, and globalization refers to the merging of the units. Globalization is much more than interdependence. In fine, the global financial crisis which took place in 2007 to 2009 has shown the world that any event taking place in one part of the world is actually bringing in change in other parts of the world. The world is powerfully interconnected. 2008 again showed a way that the states are playing an important role in bailing out the banks and financial sectors. So, in a way, the role of the state has been also emphasized after this financial devastation started taking place in 2008. The packages were given by states like America who support laissez-faire. Interdependence is high, and today the world is moving towards greater bonding, greater support and greater cooperation with each other so that every individual in every part of the world can live peacefully and live with 2 square meals a day.